Deep beneath Vatican City lies one of the most secret repositories of knowledge on Earth. Few outside the Vatican have ever seen what lies inside. For centuries, it has been guarded, restricted, and shrouded in mystery. This is the Vatican's secret archives, the world's most forbidden library. The archives are not legend, they are real, and they hold some of the most important documents in human history. Records from emperors and kings, maps from explorers, letters from popes, even transcripts from trials that shape the course of science and religion. But unlike every other major library in the world, these records are sealed from the public. Only accredited scholars are permitted entry, and even they must follow strict rules. No browsing, no exploring, no curiosity. To gain access, you must request a document by name. If you don't already know it exists, you will never see it. This makes the archive unlike anything else. The Vatican holds one of the most complete collections of human history, yet the world outside only gets to see carefully chosen fragments. We know some of what's inside: Galileo's trial transcript, letters from Henry VIII, and Michelangelo, even correspondence from Abraham Lincoln. But these are only the files the Vatican has outside the Church has ever examined. For centuries, even world leaders and historians have been turned away. The archives are legally protected, shielded from outside influence, and guarded as tightly as a military installation. Researchers estimate that less than 1% of the collection has ever been studied in detail. The rest, tens of thousands of manuscripts, remain sealed. This secrecy has fueled endless speculation. Some say the archives hide forbidden gospels that contradict the official Bible. Others believe they contain records of ancient civilizations lost to time, or maps showing the world before the last ice age. Still more claim the vaults hold prophecies, suppressed discoveries, or even knowledge of contact with beings beyond our world. The Vatican claims it is simply preserving fragile documents. Critics argue it is controlling history itself. But one fact is undeniable. The most powerful religious institution in the world has spent centuries locking away knowledge that could change everything we thought we knew about our past. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. For the first time, we'll reveal what is confirmed to be inside, the secrets rumored to be hidden, and the discoveries that could rewrite history if they were ever released. Stick around, because what has just been uncovered about the Vatican's forbidden vaults is more shocking than you've ever been told. Beneath Vatican City lies a collection unlike anything else on Earth. The Apostolic Archives, known for centuries as the Vatican Secret Archives, stretch across an estimated 50 to 53 miles of shelving. They are kept in climate-controlled vaults, deep underground, guarded and restricted. These aren't shelves that can be browsed. They are locked corridors of history, with access carefully rationed. Researchers are allowed in only under the strictest conditions. There is no browsing. There is no exploration. Access is granted only for documents already known to exist. To see anything at all, you must submit a request for a specific document by name and catalog number. Without knowing exactly what exists, you are blind. That system guarantees that the overwhelming majority of the archives, tens of thousands of manuscripts spanning over 1,200 years, remains untouched by independent scholars. What has surfaced shows the reach of the Church into every corner of civilization. These are not minor curiosities or theological footnotes. They are records of moments where science, politics, and religion collided, and where decisions made in Rome changed the course of history. One of the most famous examples is the trial of Galileo Galilei in 1633. The complete transcript of his interrogation survives in these archives. It shows, in exact words, how church authorities confronted the scientist over his support of heliocentrism, the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun. The record describes the threats he faced, the forced recantation, and his sentence to permanent house arrest. For centuries, these papers were inaccessible. When they finally came to light, they provided written proof of how the Church had suppressed scientific truth. That single file, hidden away, forced the Vatican to admit in 1992 that Galileo had been right all along. Another critical document comes from the reign of Henry VIII. In 1530, the English king petitioned Pope Clement VII to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The letter, signed by dozens of nobles and church leaders, survives in the Vatican's collection. When the annulment was refused, Henry broke from Rome, creating the Church of England and triggering the English Reformation. The original petition is still preserved in the archives, the exact moment when papal authority was challenged and European religion was split apart. The shelves also hold personal correspondence from artists whose work defined the Renaissance. Letters from Michelangelo to Pope Julius II survive, many of them demands for overdue payment during his work on St. Peter's Basilica. Far from the serene image of artist and patron, these letters reveal disputes over money, power, and control. They show that even the creation of Christianity's most iconic monuments was shaped by financial tension and papal politics. The influence of the archives doesn't stop in the Renaissance. During the American Civil War, both Abraham Lincoln and Confederate President Jefferson Davis wrote to Pope Pius IX. Lincoln appealed for support, while Davis sought recognition of the Confederacy as an independent nation. The Pope responded to Davis with a letter that Confederate leaders later used to claim legitimacy. Those letters remain in the Vatican today, evidence that Rome's voice reached into one of the defining conflicts of modern history. Each case, Galileo, Henry VIII, Michelangelo, Lincoln, and Davis, points to the same truth. Vatican entangled in pivotal moments, science silenced, kingdoms broken, and diplomacy steered. And these are just the items the Vatican has admitted exist. It's important to note the pattern. These documents were not released when they mattered most. Galileo's transcript stayed hidden until long after his death. Henry's petition was kept until the Reformation was irreversible. Michelangelo's demands were revealed only when they could no longer damage reputations. The Civil War letters were shown once the balance of power was settled. Every disclosure was delayed, timed, and calculated. That control is the real story. If the files already revealed can reframe how we see history, exposing the suppression of science, the rupture of Christendom, or the Vatican's hand in global diplomacy, then the shelves that remain sealed carry even greater weight. The archives contain correspondence with emperors. They guard the decrees of inquisitions, records of heresies, and diplomatic exchanges during wars and crusades. All of it locked in controlled silence. Which brings us to the unavoidable question: why such extreme secrecy? If the documents already released from the Vatican archives can reframe history, the greater mystery is why the rest remains sealed. The Vatican says it is about preservation, about protecting fragile paper from damage. But the rules suggest something very different. Not preservation, but control. The restrictions are absolute. Researchers cannot browse the shelves, cannot explore the collection, cannot even confirm what is there. Access is permitted only to accredited scholars, and even then under conditions that make real investigation nearly impossible. To see a document, you must already know what you're looking for. You must submit a formal request with the document's exact title and reference code. If you don't know the file exists, you will never find it. There is no public catalog. There is no comprehensive index available to outsiders. Without those tools, the archive becomes an information trap. Thousands of files can sit unseen for centuries, because only those already in the inner circle know they are there. The Vatican has also built secrecy into time. Some categories of records are locked for 75 years before even scholars can request them. That means a generation can pass before the outside world has the faintest chance of learning what the Church knew or decided. In practice, the Vatican always stays decades ahead of history. In 2019, the Vatican Pope Francis ordered the secret archives renamed the Apostolic Archives. Officials explained that the Latin word secretum simply meant private in its original context. They said the new name would clear up misunderstandings, but the change was cosmetic. The rules, the restrictions, and the locked shelves all stayed the same. The Vatican softened the language without altering the system. Compare this to other major archives. The British Library, the National Archives in Washington, the Library of Congress. Each provides searchable catalogs, free browsing, and open reading rooms. Scholars can see what exists, even if some records remain classified. In the Vatican, none of that applies. The opacity is complete. Officials frame it as conservation, fragile parchment, delicate ink, but the rules prove otherwise. But the system reveals the truth. This is not about fragility. It is about selective control, about deciding what parts of history are accessible and which remain buried. Every rule is designed to give the Vatican the final word on what survives in the public record. And secrecy always fuels suspicion. The more the Vatican refuses access, the more theories emerge about what is being hidden. Forbidden gospels that contradict Scripture. Maps showing civilizations before the flood. Relics and artifacts that could alter the timeline of human history. Prophecies too dangerous to reveal. Files on contact with beings not of this world. When you close off 99% of the world's most complete historical record, people will fill the silence with possibilities. And once you hear those possibilities, the scale of what could be hidden becomes almost impossible to ignore. The Vatican's restrictions make sense of one of the most persistent claims, that its archives hold texts deliberately excluded from the Bible. For centuries, alternative gospels and writings circulated among early Christian communities. Many were declared heretical, hidden, or destroyed. Others disappeared into obscurity, but fragments of them survive, and their contents raise serious questions about how much of Christianity's foundation was shaped not by divine inspiration, but by institutional editing. One of the most famous examples is the Gospel of Thomas. Discovered in 1945 near Nag Hammadi in Egypt, the manuscript contains 114 sayings attributed to Jesus. Some echo familiar verses, but others present a very different view, one that emphasizes personal spiritual knowledge over church hierarchy. There is no mention of crucifixion, resurrection, or final judgment. For centuries, the church denounced the text as heresy. Its survival only in hidden caches suggests it was deliberately suppressed. Another text is the Gospel of Judas, uncovered in the 1970s and kept out of public view for decades before its release in 2006. This gospel reimagines Judas Iscariot, not as the traitor who betrayed Christ, but as the disciple who obeyed Jesus' instructions in handing him over. In this version, Judas becomes the one who understood Jesus' mission more clearly than the others. Such a reversal directly undermines centuries of Catholic teaching in which Judas symbolized ultimate betrayal. It is not difficult to see why the Vatican would want this narrative marginalized. Then there is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Fragmentary copies survive from the 2nd century, and they reveal a role for Mary that challenges her later portrayal as a repentant sinner. In this gospel, she is a leader among the disciples, offering spiritual teachings equal to, and in some passages superior to, those of Peter. The text portrays jealousy and conflict between apostles over Mary's authority. If authentic, it suggests that early Christianity once accepted female leadership at the highest level, only for it to be erased as the institutional church consolidated power. The Book of Enoch adds another dimension. This Jewish text, written centuries before Christ, describes a cosmic struggle involving angels, giants, and apocalyptic visions. It was widely read in the early Christian era and is even quoted in the New Testament letter of Jude. But later, it was excluded from the canon in both Catholicism and Protestantism. Only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserves it as scripture today. Its themes, fallen angels corrupting humanity, visions of heavenly realms, predictions of judgment, resonate with ideas that later became central to Christian theology. Yet it was systematically removed from the Bible in the West. What ties all of these texts together is what happened in the 4th century. At the Council of Nicaea and subsequent councils, church leaders canonized the Bible, choosing which writings would define Christianity. Dozens of texts were rejected. Some contradicted official doctrine. Others gave too much power to women, or emphasized direct knowledge of God over obedience to authority. From that point onward, the Church insisted that only the canonical four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, represented the life and teachings of Jesus. That decision left behind an entire library of alternative scripture. If even one of those Gospels is stored intact in the Vatican's archives, it could shake the foundations of Catholic authority. A gospel where Jesus is mortal, where he marries, or where his mission is political rather than divine. Any of these would unravel centuries of dogma. Whispers of such alternate Bibles have circulated for years. Researchers speculate about texts presenting Jesus as a revolutionary leader or as a husband and father. Whether those manuscripts exist or not, the fact that so many were excluded shows how much power was invested in deciding which version of Christianity would survive. The Vatican's archives are the logical place for these texts. Missionaries, inquisitors, and church authorities would have collected manuscripts as they stamped out heresy. Some may have been destroyed, but others may have been locked away, considered too dangerous to burn but too disruptive to reveal. Their presence would explain why the Church has always been cautious about access to the archives. Words on paper can change everything. The Bible we know today was not inevitable. It was curated. It was edited. It was enforced by decree. If the archives contain the excluded Gospels, they hold the evidence of how deliberate those choices were. And if even one of those texts contradicts the official canon, Catholic authority could collapse overnight. But words on paper are only one layer. Beyond suppressed scripture, some say the Vatican vaults contain far stranger evidence. Beyond texts and manuscripts, there are persistent claims that the Vatican's archives contain physical objects, relics and artifacts locked away from public view. Unlike disputed Gospels or apocryphal writings, these are said to be items that could be touched, studied, and tested. If even one is real, it would have the power to rewrite history instantly. One of the most famous is the Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance. According to tradition, this was the weapon that pierced the side of Jesus as he hung on the cross. Multiple lances are claimed to exist in different parts of the world, but reports have circulated for centuries that the Vatican possesses the true relic. The spear has been linked in legends to military power and divine authority. Rulers from Charlemagne to Hitler have been said to seek it. If an authentic lance rests in the archives, the Vatican holds not only a relic of the crucifixion, but an object long tied to the fate of empires. The Ark of the Covenant is another relic rumored to be under Vatican control. The Ark, described in the Old Testament as a gold-covered chest, built to house the tablets of the Ten Commandments, disappeared from history thousands of years ago. Some traditions say it was taken to Ethiopia, others that it was hidden in Jerusalem before the Babylonian conquest. Yet medieval accounts suggest the Church may have acquired it at some point during the Crusades. If the Ark is there, it would be the most consequential archaeological discovery ever made. Fragments of Noah's Ark are also tied to the archives. Explorers throughout history, from early Christian pilgrims to modern expeditions, claim to find wood on Mount Ararat in Turkey that matched the biblical description. The Church has been linked to several of these reports. Were the samples quietly removed and locked in Rome? If authentic, they would be physical proof of the flood narrative central to Judeo-Christian tradition. The medieval Church collected hundreds of relics said to perform miracles: bones of saints, fragments of the true cross, shrouds, and chalices. Many were displayed in cathedrals to draw pilgrims. But others, especially those considered too controversial or powerful, were quietly removed from sight. The archives are said to hold reliquaries no longer shown to the faithful, objects once believed to heal, curse, or protect, stored away where they cannot be verified or disproven. There are also persistent claims of artifacts that do not fit the traditional religious framework. Rumors describe early machines or devices that suggest knowledge far ahead of their time. References exist to intricate astronomical instruments, timekeeping devices, even mechanical calculators predating modern invention. Stories tell of manuscripts seized from explorers describing ancient machines, confiscated and sealed because they contradicted the timeline of history taught by the Church. The Piri Reis map adds weight to these claims. Created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, the map shows coastlines of South America and, more controversially, what appears to be Antarctica, drawn centuries before it was officially discovered, and shown without ice. Scholars argue the accuracy suggests it was copied from much older source maps. If so, where did those originals come from? Some researchers believe the Vatican may hold them, hidden among charts and maps collected during the Age of Exploration. A document proving knowledge of Antarctica's true coastline before the Ice Age would change our understanding of ancient navigation forever. The possibility of explorers' reports being suppressed is not far-fetched. Missionaries and adventurers returning from the New World, Africa, or Asia often sent journals and samples to Rome. Some accounts describe civilizations and technologies that contradicted church teaching. The fact that only carefully selected reports survive in public archives raises questions. How many were confiscated, sealed, and erased from history? Unlike texts, relics cannot be dismissed as allegory or metaphor. A gospel can be called apocryphal. A prophecy can be explained away as symbolic. But a physical object, a spear, a chest, a relic with measurable age and material, would leave no room for denial. If even one of these artifacts is hidden in the Vatican's vaults, the entire historical narrative would be forced to change overnight. And some say the Vatican isn't just protecting history, they're protecting warnings of the future. The Vatican's archives are not only filled with records of the past. Some of the most controversial claims involve what they may be holding about the future. Prophecies, visions of catastrophe, collapse, and apocalypse have been tied to the vaults for more than a century. The most famous case began in 1917 in Fatima, Portugal. 3 children, aged 7, 9, and 10, reported a series of apparitions of the Virgin Mary that took place over several months. According to the accounts, the visions delivered 3 separate secrets. The first was a vision of hell, which the Church released quickly, reinforcing Catholic teaching of eternal punishment. The second predicted the end of World War I, warned of another great war, and spoke of the rise of Russia as a power spreading errors across the world, an eerie foreshadowing of the Soviet Union. The third secret was different. It was written down in 1944 by the last surviving visionary, Lucia dos Santos, and placed in a sealed envelope. In 1957, the document was transferred to the Vatican archives. Popes were said to have read it, but for decades it remained hidden from the public. In 2000, under Pope John Paul II, the Vatican finally published what it claimed was the third secret. The text described a vision of a bishop dressed in white, walking through a ruined city filled with corpses, before being shot by soldiers. Vatican officials interpreted this as a prophecy of the 1981 assassination attempt on John Paul II, in which he was shot in St. Peter's Square, but survived. But critics were quick to argue that the released text was incomplete. Clergy who had reportedly seen the original document, including Cardinal Ratzinger before he became Pope Benedict XVI, had hinted that the true contents were more explosive. Malachi Martin, a Jesuit scholar who said he read The Secret in 1960, described it as predicting catastrophic upheaval that would shake the Catholic Church to its core. He never revealed details, but in interviews he suggested it went far beyond the symbolic language released in 2000. Others have claimed the hidden portion foretells nuclear war, the collapse of the Church, or even the end of the world. The secret remained locked for over 80 years. When released, critics said the version was carefully managed to neutralize its impact. If the official version was truly complete, why had it been sealed for so long? The Fatima episode isn't the only case tying prophecy to the Vatican's vaults. Other texts are rumored to remain locked inside. One is the so-called Prophecy of the Popes, attributed to Saint Malachy in the 12th century. The document lists a series of mottos describing every pope from then until the present. Some appear eerily accurate. The final line predicts a last pope who will oversee the destruction of Rome and the end of the Church. The Vatican has never officially endorsed or rejected the prophecy, but its circulation and partial accuracy have fueled suspicion that Rome knows more than it admits. There are also accounts of correspondence between popes and visionaries, letters describing visions of disasters, global conflicts, or cataclysms. Some historians argue that throughout the Middle Ages, the Church collected and stored these apocalyptic writings, keeping them out of circulation while still consulting them privately. If true, it would mean the Vatican has long functioned as a clearinghouse for predictions of doom, filtering which ones the faithful are allowed to hear. The unique angle is clear. The Vatican presents itself as a spiritual guide, the keeper of humanity's moral compass. But if it is also hoarding prophecies of destruction, it is controlling the narrative of humanity's future. Warnings of war, collapse, or the downfall of the Church itself may already sit on those shelves, withheld not for preservation, but for control. And that raises the obvious question. If the Church has withheld warnings of nuclear war, global catastrophe, or its own downfall, what else is locked away in those shelves? And prophecy isn't the end of the speculation. Some believe the Vatican's secrecy reaches beyond Earth itself. Among the most controversial claims about the Vatican's hidden vaults are those involving contact with the unknown, files on UFOs, unexplained aerial phenomena, and accounts of otherworldly visitors. Whether or not the details are true, the persistence of these stories has everything to do with the Vatican's refusal to open its shelves. There are repeated allegations that the archives hold reports of strange celestial objects collected by Church officials over centuries. Letters and chronicles describe unusual lights in the sky, fiery disks, and luminous beings. Some researchers argue that the Vatican dispatched emissaries to gather these accounts during the Middle Ages, filing them away alongside more conventional correspondence. If missionaries reported heavenly ships over remote villages, those records would likely have been absorbed into Rome's vast bureaucracy. Certain biblical passages are often re-examined in this light. The prophet Ezekiel's vision of a wheel within a wheel descending from the heavens has been read by some as a description of a spacecraft. The Old Testament's chariots of fire, long treated as metaphor for divine power, resemble in modern terms the language of aerial encounters. Medieval chronicles also contain accounts of objects described as ships or wheels crossing the sky, reports that may have been interpreted as omens at the time, but today read like early UFO sightings. The Vatican is not indifferent to the heavens. It operates one of the oldest astronomical institutions in the world, the Vatican Observatory, founded in the 16th century. In modern times, the Church has invested heavily in advanced telescopes, including facilities in Arizona. One of its most powerful instruments on Mount Graham is nicknamed Lucifer, a name drawn from Latin for light bringer, but one that has fueled endless speculation. Why would the Vatican pour resources into scanning the skies, unless it had a vested interest in what might be found? Researchers who study the Vatican's role in space science argue that the Church is preparing for a paradigm shift. Some suggest the Vatican already knows that extraterrestrial contact has occurred, or that it is inevitable and is quietly controlling the narrative. The reasoning is simple. Confirmation of intelligent life beyond Earth would shake the foundations of every religion. If the Vatican were forced to reconcile its theology with evidence of civilizations older or more advanced than humanity, the consequences for its authority could be catastrophic. Even without proof of alien files in the archives, the secrecy itself fuels the theories. By refusing to grant open access, the Vatican creates a vacuum that speculation fills. Every closed door, every redacted file, becomes evidence to believers that the truth is being hidden. There may be no craft in the basements, but silence ensures the theory endures. Whether these claims are true or not, the Vatican's secrecy has made them impossible to disprove. And secrecy on this scale is not unique to Rome. Throughout history, the most powerful empires have always hidden their greatest knowledge underground. This pattern of burying power is not unique to Rome. Across time and place, the institutions that hold authority, pharaohs, emperors, dictators, have hidden their most consequential assets below ground. The Vatican's secrecy looks less like an anomaly and more like a constant in human governance. Conceal what threatens you. Control what survives. Start with the Great Pyramid of Giza. In 2017, an international team using cosmic ray muon tomography detected a previously unknown void inside Khufu's pyramid. The so-called Big Void is a tunnel-sized cavity above the Grand Gallery, roughly 30 meters long. It showed up on multiple independent scans, and yet the space remains unopened. Egypt's antiquities authorities cite preservation and structural risk. Critics point out the obvious parallel to the Vatican. Modern science finds a hidden chamber, and officialdom shuts down further access. Officials cite conservation, but the result is identical: a chamber discovered and then locked away. Move east to modern China. Since the Cold War, Beijing has built what sources call an underground Great Wall, a dispersed network of tunnels and hardened facilities stretching for thousands of miles. Open-source military analyses, satellite imagery, and defector testimony indicate a subterranean infrastructure designed to conceal and move missile forces. Analysts estimate thousands of kilometers of reinforced galleries, rail links, and storage caverns, an underground redundancy that places the most destructive capacity of a modern state out of reach of prying powers. The motive is simple and brutal: hide your strike capability so it can survive first attack. That logic, hide the thing that guarantees survival, is identical in form to what the Vatican does with documents that could destabilize belief or power. Then consider Mount Yamantau in Russia's southern Urals. For decades, U.S. satellite analysts tracked extensive construction rail spurs, spoil piles, sealed access points. Moscow's official line has shifted: food storage, mining, regional development, while observers catalog evidence of massive excavation and reinforced subterranean entrances. Western intelligence analysts privately concluded the site is consistent with Cold War-era continuity of government complexes: large underground chambers, command centers, storage, and life support systems. The scale reported by some sources, corridors capable of housing thousands, systems designed to operate independently for months, reads like a subterranean city. Again, an elite buries its most vital infrastructure out of sight. What unites Giza, Beijing, Moscow, and Rome is the same political logic. Visibility equals vulnerability. Public knowledge grants accountability and contestability. Concealment preserves control. Pharaohs entombed wealth and cult objects in hidden chambers. Empires buried records and relics in vaults. Modern states build subterranean arsenals and command nodes. The Vatican is not oddly secretive. It is following a historical playbook where institutions that hold the narrative of power also control the archival record of that power. That comparison reframes the archive debate. This isn't merely about fragile parchment or curatorial caution. It is about who gets to write the story of humanity. Whether the object hidden is a sarcophagus, a nuclear warhead, or a set of manuscripts that rewrite doctrine, the principle is identical. Those who hold the underground vaults hold leverage over the future. Every vault, every sealed chamber, every guarded archive raises the same question: why? Why keep so much knowledge underground, inaccessible to the world? The Vatican's official line is preservation. They say fragile manuscripts require protection, that centuries-old ink cannot survive constant handling. That may be partly true. But the rules, no browsing, no catalog, no public transparency, go far beyond preservation. They point to something deeper: selective control. One reason often suggested is theological survival. If the archives contain texts or relics that contradict church doctrine, revealing them could fracture the foundations of Catholic authority. An alternate gospel Portraying Jesus as married or as a mortal revolutionary would destabilize centuries of teaching. Relics like the Ark of the Covenant or the true Spear of Destiny, if studied independently, might confirm myths or disprove them. The safest option for the Vatican is silence. Another explanation is political. The archives contain correspondence between popes and kings, emperors, generals, presidents, diplomatic letters that might expose double dealings, betrayals, or backroom negotiations. To release them would rewrite national histories and embarrass states that still exist today. Secrecy shields not only the Vatican, but the reputations of nations across the globe. Then there are the prophecies. If documents like the Third Secret of Fatima contain warnings of nuclear war, collapse, or apocalypse, the Church may believe withholding them prevents panic. Yet by filtering what humanity is allowed to know about its possible future, the Vatican acts not as a guide, but as a gatekeeper. Fringe theories go even further. Some claim the archives contain proof of civilizations predating recorded history. Maps showing Antarctica before the ice, chronicles of lost continents like Atlantis. Others suggest suppressed discoveries of ancient technology, confiscated from explorers and missionaries, locked away because they don't fit the accepted timeline. There are even allegations of files on extraterrestrial contact, sealed reports of aerial phenomena gathered over centuries, and Vatican observatory research pointing to knowledge never shared with the public. Secrecy guarantees these theories multiply. The Vatican's refusal to open its shelves ensures speculation never dies. Every locked vault becomes proof of something withheld. Every delay in release becomes a sign that the truth is too explosive to share. And this is the unique angle of the Vatican's power. Pharaohs hid their treasures. Superpowers built nuclear bunkers. But the Vatican holds the narrative of humanity itself. In its underground corridors lie not just relics and manuscripts, but the ability to decide what version of history, and perhaps even what version of the future, the world is allowed to see. If even fragments of what is rumored to be inside are real, then history as we know it is incomplete, and may be deliberately kept that way. Now we want to hear from you. Leave your theories in the comments, and we'll be replying to our favorite ones. If you found this video compelling, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. We've got more investigations ahead that will challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. And if you want to keep uncovering hidden history, click the video on screen now. Thanks for watching, thanks for thinking, and as always, stay curious.